1 in 5 Americans suffer from chronic pain. Many are now using CBD for relief.
Activists are hoping pot could be legalized nationwide by the end of 2019.
When we look at premium cannabis, the Illinois House approved legalizing recreational marijuana.
Welcome to The Budding Report, a weekly show centered around all things cannabis. Please join us in welcoming our host, Charles Horton, and his co-host, Melissa Nasits, as they share the latest in cannabis news, conduct interviews with top leaders in the cannabis space, and promote some of the latest in science and innovation. And now to our host, Charles Horton.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Budding Report. It's great to be here again. Now, last week, I really missed my live in-person co-host. Melissa, welcome back. I'm glad to have your energy here again.
Oh, it's always good to be back, and it's a beautiful day in our neighborhood, so I'm glad to be here.
It is a beautiful day. The temperatures are going down. I had a friend come in from California yesterday. He drove all the way here, and he's saying that all of the pictures of the smoke and all is exactly what they're seeing every day. So it cleared up once he got a good distance away from Las Vegas, but he came here and it's beautiful and clear. I'm enjoying the weather right now.
Yeah, but speaking of the fires, I was in San Diego. I lived there for years, and it would get so bad that it would rain ash. And it looked apocalyptic. You'd walk outside, it'd be the middle of the day, and it'd be dark. The sun's red, if you can see it at all. I mean, it's terrifying, and the whole coast is burning up right now.
It's horrible.
Really
I hate seeing all of those pictures. Chris, welcome from Austin. How's the weather down in Austin?
It's perfect. It's beautiful outside today. Unlike I think last week it was raining, or a couple weeks ago. So we've gotten some great weather. It's no longer 100 degrees. And as you can see, I'm chilling outside today.
And are you really outside?
I'm not really outside. This is a wonderful background created by my beautiful and wonderful and very, very smart wife who figured out how to do this after we'd had obviously some technical problems last week. So hopefully we're full speed ahead now.
Well, I'm really happy that your mouth and your voice is in sync now, because last week it was kind of funny. There'd be the voice, and then all of a sudden the mouth would start moving. And I like the little ad there. Good job.
Yeah, it's the little things like getting your mouth in sync with your voice that are so important for these types of broadcasts, aren't they?
It is.
Takes me back to old TV.
There you go. Christian, you have a different background today. Where are you at? How's the weather there?
So the background's actually realistic this time. I'm in, what is this? My living room. And
okay.
I'll be here for another week and a half before I get to return to Indiana. Unfortunately, the weather has spiked up again in Arizona, and we're hovering in the mid, 105, 106. We got a little taste of going under 100, now we're back for a while.
I'm not jealous of your temperatures at all. Is any of the smoke coming into your area?
We did have a point last week where for about half the day, Phoenix was covered with a weird haze, which was kind of creepy, but that blew past us and it's back to normal.
I went to Las Vegas, last week, and when I flew in, it was like 50-mile-an-hour winds, and apparently it blew out all of the smoke. So then the next day it was clear as could be, but the weather forecast was for all the smoke to join back in. Well, I hope we're able to get a hold of all these fires and get them under control. I'll give a brief introduction of our two guests in case they speak up during the news section, but we'll give a better introduction of them in a little bit. But we have Michael Brubeck from Centuria Foods. How are you today, Michael?
Excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Where are you calling from?
Denver, Colorado.
No smoke there, or is there?
Yes, actually, the air quality is probably the worst it's been in about a week. So,
in a week. Well, I hope it gets better there in Denver, but Denver generally has beautiful and kind of crisp weather.
Usually, but we've got 300,000 acres on fire right now, so it's a little hazy in the background.
That's horrible. And we have Debra Borchardt from Green Market Report. Welcome, Debra.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, we're going to go straight to Christian with the news of the day.
Thanks, Charles. So today on the news, what's exciting is an international task force got together to issue some guidelines which really were never in place before on using medical cannabis to manage chronic pain. So this group was led by Dr. Aaron Basker, who's out of Imperial College associated with the National Health Service in the UK. And a 20-clinician global task force determined dosing and administration of medical cannabis in chronic pain patients. So just to kind of give a quick overview, they made the following recommendations. Start with a routine measure. This involved giving 5 milligrams of CBD twice a day. Introducing THC should only be considered if there's no response by patients when you dose them up to 40 milligrams of CBD daily. And at this point, the starting dose when you're introducing THC should be 2.5 milligrams daily. The second recommendation was adopting stringent doses for geriatric patients, as elderly patients have multiple chronic diseases. How they process drugs is far less efficient than someone younger. And they're already on other medications. This involves starting a THC dose at 1 milligram daily and slowly titrating up as necessary. And lastly, a rapid protocol was recommended for severe chronic pain patients. This means giving a balanced dose of CBD THC to those suffering from severe pain, and that recommended dose beginning with 2.5 to 5 milligrams of THC once or twice daily.
And you're a medical doctor, and you're a big fan of using CBD and I believe the whole plants in your practice for multiple purposes. What do you think about the guidelines that were issued? Is it enough? Do you do more?
I think this is a great start, especially because it's coming from an international body. The National Health Service tends to really be quite a worldwide innovative voice for these types of protocols. So I was happy that they led the way on this. I did some training while I was studying in the UK, and so I got to be part of the NHS. As for where it will go, I think this starts the dialogue. I believe the CDC has recently closed a discussion period to review submissions of input from the public comment of how to handle medical cannabis for chronic pain. And it's anticipated they're going to incorporate some degree of recommendations specific to America as well. So it's certainly moving in the right direction. And I think as we progress, we'll get more and more variations of this.
Do you think that, partly in response to the opioid addiction that we're in right now, that this will be pushed through a little bit faster? I know that they're looking for, side effects or interactions with other drugs, and it's still so new to be studied this way. But how do you think that it's going to be tackled with that? And I did notice in the article there was something about that they didn't recommend THC for patients that already had existing, I think, psychosomatic issues.
Right. So I believe that the THC element for psychosomatic concerns, there's still the belief that certain individuals with mental health issues can actually have such issues potentiated with THC. It does have a kind of a ability to stimulate psychosis in certain individuals, and I think they're extrapolating from there that it could, through its kind of anxiety-provoking aspects, lead to issues that might exacerbate these psychosomatic complaints that patients have.
Chris, I'll direct this question to you. Really exciting that the CDC is looking at making some of their own recommendations for this use. But as long as at least THC remains illegal, how can can the CDC make recommendations as a federal government body to states that are allowing medical cannabis?
Yeah, well, I think that the CDC can make these types of recommendations, especially in conjunction with what we talked about last week, where they're going to allow more research into cannabis and not just a very low-grade cannabis that was being made at Ole Miss. You can go to some of these states that actually have the cannabis that's on the market. So as long as I think we need to get that bill passed first, and then the CDC can actually make these recommendations because they would have the authority of Congress to do so. And I also believe that the more we get scientific protocols like this, the more it kind of counters the detractors to cannabis legality, especially THC legality, because one of the main arguments is always that there's no data supporting cannabis for pain management. And so that's one of the reasons that I think that these protocols are excellent for the legal front, hopefully in the future.
Do you think Congress does need to act before the CDC can make those recommendations, or can they make them without that congressional act passing?
Well, I think the CDC can make recommendations regardless based on the research they have, but I do think it would be wise for the CDC to be able to conduct its own research. So I think you would get a better CDC report and better CDC findings if they were allowed to do their own research on the cannabis that's actually being used by the American public, not just some low THC grade cannabis that's over at the University of Mississippi. So the answer to your question is they can do it, but I don't think it's as effective as if they would if they had a full panoply of cannabis to test and research if Congress acted.
Well, call your congressman and let's get them to act. We're going to go off to a commercial break. When we come back, Michael Brubeck of Centuria Foods will be with us, and we'll be right back.
Hello, hello. Here on my lunch run in the middle of the heat where I get my break really quick after training clients and leading some classes. I am taking my Simply Satisfy. It is 3 sprays, organic hemp. Next one is my Simply Start. You can take it twice a day or once a day. I already took my morning dose. I'm now taking my afternoon dose. One little yummy organic hemp. Check them out. Simply Generous. Helicopter. All right, time to go train and run down the hill. Bye-bye.
Well, we're back, and I'd like to welcome Michael Brubeck as the CEO of Centuria Foods. He has about 2 decades of experience in medical pharmaceuticals and research, as well as legal cannabis. He's a leader in the hemp space for innovation and trend setting, and he literally did write the book on the cannabis industry. Is Tipping the Scale, the book that changed everything you know about investing in cannabis. So this is very exciting. So Michael, please tell us about the book and what is it all about?
Well, I started writing the book in 2016, published it in 2017, solely on the grounds that 100% of the investment and capital deployed that was visible to the public, and just being an insider in the cannabis space, I felt was being deployed recklessly and frankly just being wasted. And so identified a few, case studies that in Canada, publicly traded companies that had raised heroic amounts of money, comparatively speaking, for that era, and I felt they spent every dollar incorrectly, and ultimately it resulted in what we saw as like the 2019 kind of cannabis stock crisis in that region.
So when we talked on our pre-interview, you have an incredible background. Tell us just in brief form about what all you've done in the industry.
Well, I mean, we can look at one part of my resume, which would be how many 3-letter agency interventions I've had. And so that'd be, I think, 3 DEA raids and 1 grand jury investigation with the U.S. Attorney General's office. Obviously, no arrests, no indictments. Otherwise, we could look at actual performance inside the industry. So, multitude of retail dispensaries under the Bush administration, the first permitted cultivation site in North America on 44 acres in 2009. The Department of Justice shut that down in 2011, and we moved operations to a biotech company in Latin America and then Europe. And so we focused on large scale farming in Europe, hemp farming, federally permitted nurseries, and as a big component of the emerging CBD industry, really focused our research efforts on identifying efficient ways of separating THC from CBD to maintain federal compliance.
So Michael, you're credited with inventing the first commercial solution for THC remediation. Can you tell us about that and why?
Well, I think we did it out of necessity. I've never felt that we needed to break laws to be successful. And so I think when you were looking at the nascent CBD industry from 2012 to maybe 2016, you had a lot of companies that were relying on illegal sources from China for isolate. You had companies that were importing crude oil from the European Union that was miscoded and had very high levels of THC. I saw that as overly reckless. I felt that there's a solution that was better than simply lying about what you're importing and hoping for the best. And so the challenge that we saw in that process was that you have an identical molecular mass between THC and CBD. That created its own challenges for separation. And then if you look at the volatility points of both molecules, they're too similar for molecular distillation. So what we ended up actually going to was large-scale chromatography, which is virtually unheard of in use in 2013 and 14. And so really mastering that technology at the scale that we were currently operating at, extracting upwards of 20 metric tons a day back in those times, was the focus of the company, and we succeeded. And since then, have simply made that technology better.
So, Michael, Centuria has been solving for the rate step. Can you go into more detail on that?
Absolutely. So what my company, since we got out of retail and into manufacturing, the first step was obviously mastering farming. So, in 2009, we were on a 44-acre cultivation site in California. It was the first state permitted cultivation facility in the United States. And so the goal of that project was to identify how to develop the technologies to actually grow 10,000 acres of cannabis and then convert that into a retail ready product. And that's something that no one had even attempted. So we didn't actually reach out to the medical marijuana cultivation community as they were ill-equipped to, I think, handle this question. We actually went to the head of plant science at UC Davis, which is the largest plant science department in the United States, and picked a team of a handful of professors and top graduates from that program to really ask them how they would grow marijuana, not knowing a single thing other than what they could draw from literature about the physical characteristics of the plant. And so what they did is took technologies from the tulip and rose industry. They looked at the strawberry industry and really kind of drew on those experiences to then engineer how a larger cannabis nursery would actually function. And I felt that we were very successful. As if you look at our 2017 numbers, our cost per gram was under 0.2 cents per gram for the farming component. And so at that point, we made a decision as a company to stop farming, as we felt that the at least the CBD farming point in the supply chain would become oversaturated, which it was. And all of these things were clearly predicted in the book on saturation points and commoditizing markets. So we identified farming as the first one, we mastered it, and then we moved on to focus on extraction, mastered that, and then moved on to highly technical post-extraction processes that are absolutely critical to maintaining federal compliance internationally.
Wow. So I have sort of a two-part question. Since you've been talking so much about the technological aspects, what do you think that the most important technological technologies on the road to the next 2 years, where we're supposed to hit, $20 billion in the industry? And then the second part is, what would you say even further out, the sci-fi aspect? I mean, we're talking in 10 more years, 2030, being up into, what is it, like 2.4 trillion, I think?
That's Brightfield Group and Bank of America's analysis of the industry. Is that by 2032 that the global cannabis industry, and we're talking THC and CBD combined in all of its uses, will exceed $2.4 trillion a year. And so just focusing on the CBD aspect in the near term, that same report was estimating that within the next 30 months, the CBD industry is going to grow from $2 billion to $24 billion. Now, I can tell you that there's a single gatekeeping step that's going to prevent any company from being part of that revenue growth, and that's THC remediation. We had 82 meetings last year with national and regional retailers and brands and distributors. 100% of them had the same two requirements. One is that none of their products contained isolate as a base ingredient. They consider it to be an active pharmaceutical ingredient and therefore illegal. The second is that no THC existed in the base ingredients. Therefore, the only base ingredient that all 82 companies were requesting being used in the future within their stores or brands was broad spectrum THC-free distillate.
So, Michael, you seem, based on experience and knowledge, to be one of the experts in the field. I can't wait to read your book. Talk to us more about your book, please.
Well, it's actually really commonsensical information. I feel like, I could have put everything into a 10-page pamphlet. If you're going to go deploy $40 million in British Columbia on a 1-acre nursery with 135 employees, how do you expect to, if you're an investor looking at something like that and you say, well, what if this concept is radically successful? And now you're looking at taking this 1-acre nursery to, let's say, 100 acres or even 1,000 acres. Are you going to go out if you have 135 employees managing that 1-acre site because you have no mechanization and relying solely on a very labor-intensive process? I mean, are you going to go out and hire 13,000 people to be successful in an emerging market? And the answer is absolutely not. Your company is going to collapse under its own weight. And so we just saw examples like that continuing to mimic capital deployments, both mainly in Canada, somewhat in the United States, with private investments. And so I just felt it was important to point out the absurdity of what these actions were going to result in. And so accurately, I feel the book predicted the 2019 stock crisis as well as the CBD farming crisis of 2019. Where we saw a complete destruction of farming revenues inside the United States.
So I invested in several public company stocks, I believe most of them Canadian, last year, and was thinking I was at the bottom. I was wrong, and they seem to have dropped even further. In your opinion, are there any good public company investments out there right now?
Harvest One out of Nevada is the only company that actually fits my criteria in terms of publicly traded companies that are developing processes that fit into a larger model that's competitive both once interstate commerce is allowed inside the United States as well as for international exports.
And are you in this stock now?
No, I don't have. I do not invest in the stock market.
Okay.
It's a casino.
Well, good to know what your one investment would be, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna take a look because I guess I do like the casino myself. I've done pretty well at it over the last 30 years. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. You can get all of our information on how to contact our guests on our website. Please sign up for our newsletter. We'll send you out a nice offer for Michael's book and other things as they come up. So be sure and sign up for our newsletter. Contact Michael, contact any of our guests. They love to hear from you, and we love to hear business deals getting done through the show. So we'll be right back after this brief message.
Hello, coming to you from the outdoors where I do my heat training, and I did my repeats on the hills. It's actually pretty empty, but it's kind of close to 90 degrees. So that's when I squeeze in whenever I can, but I'm actually here to share what Simply Start, Simply Satisfy is. So this organic hemp oil, this is the serum Simply Start, and you can take it twice a day or once. I already took both of them in this morning, so now it's lunchtime. Real quick and easy, yummy, delicious, 30 calories. The other one is Simply Satisfy. So it's a spray and also 3 sprays. You could do it once a day or twice a day. Again, I did it this morning. I'm doing it now at lunch. It helps you take care of your health and wellness. So learn more about them. Remember, 3 simple changes on how you can incorporate into your life. You can learn more at the link below. So stay safe and keep moving, keep training, and take care of your spirit, mind, and body.
So now we get to welcome Debra Borchard. She is CEO and editor-in-chief of the Green Marketplace. She has a master's degree in business and economic reporting and 8 years as a financial journalist at TheStreet.com. She's earned awards from American Society of Business Publications, an advisory board member for Access Wire, and a co-founder of the Female Cannabis Networking Group. So we'd love to welcome you and want to find out what prompted you to launch the Green Market Report.
Well, my background is in Wall Street. I was a vice president at Bear Stearns, and then I got my master's degree in business and economic reporting. And I worked at TheStreet.com for 8 years with Jim Cramer, and I started covering cannabis back then. But if you'll recall, in those days, mainstream media really did not take cannabis seriously. It was kind of considered a joke, and I had colleagues telling me I was ruining my career for covering cannabis. And at that point, I really felt like it was going to be the biggest business story of the decade. And so I went out on my own and was freelancing. But then the outlets I was freelancing with had limitations on what I could still cover. And that's when I decided I wanted to start my own outlet, because I didn't feel that the cannabis industry was getting covered in the financial press the way it should be.
Hey, you're a true entrepreneur. You want to make the rules, not follow them. I love it. How is your news site, your news website, different than others?
Well, we celebrated 3 years this week, so
congratulations.
We're still alive. And we're different in the sense that we do consider ourselves to be unbiased reporting. We are not just cheerleaders for the cannabis industry, of which there are several cannabis business websites that are just cheerleaders for the industry. And the problem that you run into with that, as Michael alluded to, is that not all cannabis companies are doing super well, and they're taking a lot of investor money and then throwing it away. And because our website treats them as we would treat any other industry, if they're behaving badly, we're going to say so. And, you know, that sometimes catches us, you know, in the crosshairs of people that only want to hear, you know, the rainbows and unicorns of the cannabis industry.
So I've read some articles in the past on the street specific to, you know, the opiate epidemic, critiques of the pharmaceutical company, and I've always found them to be excellent. So I'm wondering what your background, how your background makes this such a great fit now for what you're doing.
So when I was at Bear Stearns, I really learned how to, you know, read company filings that are on the SEC and how to drill down into them pretty quickly and make a quick determination of what they were saying. And so I really feel that, you know, you have a lot of business reporters out there right now that aren't really adept at doing that. And because I had a securities license, I had a registered investment advisor's license, I really understood the dynamics of the market and really understood the dynamics of what makes a good company versus a crappy company. And so that's really what I brought to my reporting. And I think that having that background of being on Wall Street and then having the ability to also put that in layman's terms and make that information accessible is what is the secret sauce.
And Debra, do you think that also has something to do with the how and why Green Market Report has been able to outlast some of the competition?
Well, we were and have been bootstrapped. And so I think, you know, when it is your own money on the line, you treat things a little bit differently. And there just really wasn't the option to fail. And when I see some of these other competitors who raised millions of dollars and then just, you know, threw it away on private jets and expensive hotel rooms, you know, that just really wasn't the way we wanted to approach things. And so I think that having that sensitivity to wanting to be successful and having our own money on the line, that was the big difference. You know, we didn't have, you know, millions from investors to just, you know, blow, and therefore we didn't do it.
Well, so now that you've celebrated 3 years, what would you say is the latest development for the Green Market Report?
So we did update our logo, which was just a little thing, but you know, when you're starting out and you don't have a lot of money, you kind of use the logo creator online, which is, you know, really cheap, but it gets you going. And then we're working on another website that's going to be really focused on stock traders. There's a real community of retail traders. And, you know, Derek, you alluded to that. They like to talk amongst themselves. They like to compare notes. And right now that's happening in a very fractured environment. There's people on Twitter, there's people on Facebook, they're all over the place. So we're hoping to create a website that's not only going to have profiles of all the cannabis company and news aggregation, but then it's also going to have the ability for these traders to kind of come together and have a place to create their own profiles and trading portfolios that people can watch and discuss and talk about. We're also, you know, see this as a great additional source of revenue. You know, media is not an easy business. And, you know, everybody wants their news for free. Nobody wants to pay for it. Cannabis companies also don't want to pay for advertising. Events were really where we made our money. There are no events now. So we always had this plan. We had this website that we were kind of working on in the background. And because we were doing events, we really didn't have the time to focus on it. And now that we've had the chance to stop and pivot, we are now getting that ready to launch that. And then I'm also working on a book, but not quite ready to publish yet.
Well, I look forward to your book. I have to ask you one more question, the same question I asked Michael, and that is what investments are out there right now in the public companies that you would think make sense?
I was hoping you were going to ask that.
Well, because I used to be a licensed professional, I don't like to recommend stocks. But what I would like to tell people is really look for the companies right now that are starting to turn a profit, because not all cannabis companies are turning a profit. A lot of them are still continuing to report massive losses. But there are some companies that are starting to report net income. And I think that to me, is where you need to look. And it doesn't matter whether they're, to me, it doesn't matter whether they're, you know, a giant company or a smaller company, but the fact that you've got these companies now starting to report net income, they've started to turn the corner. If they're turning the corner early and now, those are the ones you need to focus on.
Well, thank you for that advice.
I just want to build off Charles' question quickly, because, you know, as a non-expert investor, I do have positions within the cannabis industry, and I've hedged myself vis-a-vis ETFs, really, that have the basket holdings. And so what I'm wanting to know is, you know, how is your thought process on kind of an investor looking both upstream and downstream with respect to kind of the what businesses will be circulating around cannabis? Like, I know one of my ETFs has a significant holding in Scott's Miracle-Gro, because it's an essential aspect to a lot of that farming. Would there be other companies that would be able to, you know, be a solid investment because they're providing kind of ancillary services to this growing industry?
Well, you bring up Scott's Miracle-Gro, which has been doing some pretty phenomenal numbers. We've also seen great numbers out of Grow Generation. We've also seen really strong performance on the real estate side, where you see like an Innovative Industrial Properties, where they buy the properties and then they do a lease back to the companies that have sold them. And I believe we're going to start to see some of the SPACs that were created last year. And if our listeners don't know what that is, that's a special purpose acquisition company. They raise a bunch of millions and then they put it towards something. It's expected that they're going to also look at the real estate side. We're seeing a lot of these little real estate companies popping up. They're just focused on cannabis because I think they saw the IIP model and went, hey, that's working. And so you're seeing a lot of copycats going into that. So I really think that those are the areas that you would want to focus on. You know, GrowGen has really captured a huge market share in this area and are continuing to capture market share. And again, IIP has also done the same because they were early to market. So these companies that were early to market are really doing well.
So I use Motley Fool for a lot of stock investments, and Shopify was the number one marijuana pick because they're the main distributor of cannabis in Canada, and boy, has it done well in the last year. I got scared in the market during coronavirus, and really still kind of am not understanding the numbers, the PE numbers, in conjunction to revenues. But that one's done really well for me as a side pick. Well, Debra, thank you for coming on. It's time for us to close out the show. Remember, you can go to our website at the Budding Report or buddingreport.com. All of our guests are on there. They love to hear from you. Next week, we have Dr. Gold Joseph, physician, and we have Jeff Freeman, the co-founder and director of sales of Infuse. So we look forward to having both of those on. Please join us next week, and you have a great week. Call your congressman and get these bills passed, too.